we as a society have created OnlyFans. It is a huge platform, and it has its fingers in everything. You know, I follow the Magic the Gathering community very closely, and there are 6 or 7 Magic the Gathering themed ladies who have OnlyFans who their whole content is, yes, I like the same video game and card game as you, but I'm also naked.
Yeah.
So please give me $5 a month.
Right.
And I'm not knocking the hustle. But power to
the people. Yeah.
Empowerment is fine.
Yeah.
I am cool with whatever you want to do to make money.
Yeah.
But it's the cultural shift that has an impact on the children that we do need to consider. It's the classic, think about the children.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
That'll set it up for us.
Oh, that will set it up. Now that's all you're getting, buddy.
Oh, set it up brilliant. Watch, refresh, nothing but ass on this page.
That's funny. We'll give it 10 booty likes.
Yeah, right. Like I'm a like.
We'll like
I love Little Hand Girl. This chick's so funny.
So, is it my understanding that you guys are attempting to persuade this algorithm to make the point that you're trying to make?
Yeah.
We are trying to say that if you go on TikTok, because like I've had this happen to me personally, where I had a TikTok and I had to not like 150 videos of underage girls dancing and only like things that I thought were appropriate. And it would still, to this day, when I pull up TikTok, every 5th, 6th one I scroll is like an inappropriate teenager dance.
Like, this is all like tattoos. I've got skateboard. Here's a video of monkeys taking marshmallows out of a big pile. Fashion design stuff.
But it knows you.
More
so
soccer
I mean,
stuff,
everything it's talking about is you to a T. So just because you're saying, well, I don't fuck with girls dancing, like I get that, but you still understand how the algorithm works. And
well, yeah, I mean, I'm saying, well, because that's why I was asking. That's why I was asking you guys if you, like, y'all were setting up this algorithm to prove the point that the algorithm is somehow trying to show you these things, but you're having to tell it to show you those things in order to make that point.
No, I feel what you're saying, and we are contriving an experiment here, so we're manipulating the controls, but. Like, even my mom was talking about this. She was like, she's into, she like the military guys on TikTok, like things like military jokes and stuff like that. Well, when the Black Lives Matter protest came up, all she would get was police stuff, like just all this stuff. Now, TikTok was flooded with that anyways, but I mean, she was just getting this nonstop. And she was like, man, it sucks because TikTok just changed on me. She was like, I came for the funny stuff, the interesting whatever. But it's like that sometimes. I'm not mad that the algorithm, but it's so aggressive sometimes.
Yeah.
And then if you just make the mistake of liking 2 or 3 things, then all of a sudden that could throw off your whole shit. And it'll constantly perpetuate that to you.
I've made a point not to like booties.
Yeah.
I'm in my 6th scroll, and it's a lingerie, like, walking towards the camera, slow-mo, like, titty booty pic.
Yeah.
You know that even though you're not liking that, staying on there for longer
don't,
tells the algorithm that.
But that's the thing. I scroll past it. Or, like, it's.
Well, no, I'm saying it's tracking how long you spend on each one. So that's what I'm saying is, like, as you sit on there, even though you don't like it, it knows that you've spent longer on that tile than some other tiles, and it's tracking all of those things.
I get
Which
you.
sucks, because if I'm just putting my phone down because I want to make a sandwich real quick, next thing you know, it's all ass pictures.
Or here's how they get you. It's not ass.
I was just trying to make a sandwich.
It's a premise without ass.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what's the premise? Yeah. And the punchline is, I'm walking towards you half naked. So you're like, oh, I don't like that. And you scroll.
But it's too late.
And it'll be like, oh,
you already waited.
What's this? And you're waiting. And it's just a woman, maybe comedy talking, and then it'll be like, ass and titties. And you're like, oh, sorry, I don't like that. But they already got you. Like you're saying, because you stayed on the tile. Yeah. I never even thought about that.
Oh, yeah.
Doing it again. This shit is literal poison. It's poison to the mind, dude.
So there's this challenge with the Big
Jesus
Bang. Oh yeah, boys. We're in it today.
Rod's like, we're in it.
Yeah. This is welcome to what my TikTok and Instagram looks like. So there's this challenge going on. Let's use this girl as an example.
Look how you hating on a bitch and you my mama age. I got a small waist, pretty face with a big bang. Look how you hating
That's what it is. That's what it is. That's the whole dance.
I think I remember you talking about
I
this
was
on
talking
your
about this
stories,
on my stories.
about how
sure.
the bank was like, instead of actually talking about your hustle and shit, you're just like, your moneymaker is your ass.
Yeah,
and isn't that what we were trying to get away from?
Right? And I had to call out these ladies, not call them out. I mean, if this is your vibe, then it's your vibe or whatever. But,
it's their lane.
It's like, what is this even? Like, what is that even?
It is a thirst trap.
That's exactly what it is. It's thirst trap. Like, we have Pornhub for this. So I'm like, whatever. But nonetheless, funny with the thumb guy. That look like Mac person. So I was clowning the ladies,
She didn't
right?
have really the smallest waist.
No, not
She
necessarily.
did have a big bank though.
That's true. She did have that.
So I was clowning a little bit because I'm like, women empowerment, all this stuff, and then you have this opportunity to. This lady said I got a big bank, meaning like I got lots of money in my bank account. Yes. Something that guys or other people would normally flex is like the size of our bank account, which is still also silly to flex, but nonetheless, that's what the flex was supposed to be about. But somehow that got turned into this trend where now girls just say, look at my face, look how skinny my waist is, and you turn around, you got this gigantic ass. And now it's fun to watch. Don't get me wrong, as a dude, I'm like, damn, because they jump around, and these asses huge. And it's all about like getting it to jiggle, make sure you wear the tightest pants possible, right? And show off the fact that you have this big ass. And I was just like, man, why are you, aren't you kind of falling for the trap here? Like you turn that into, a showing off of saying, these are my assets. This is what I have to flex. Like, this is what makes me valuable in our society is the fact that I have this big ass. And so, it was very interesting, but nonetheless, like I said, I'm not a hater. I love to look at some good ass too. So I'm looking at these things, but then all of a sudden, what do I see? These 11, 12, maybe 7 and 9-year-old girls
doing
I
the
got
big bank booty challenge,
small waist, pretty face, and a big bank. Literally that exact thing. And I'm just like, yo, like, of course, the first thing I'm like is, where are your fucking parents at? Like, where are your parents?
Encouraging them to get more followers on TikTok is where their parents are. That's where their parents are.
So. Or they're definitely not paying attention. I'll tell you that much. If they're not encouraging it, they're definitely not paying attention.
Was that what's her face?
Who's what's her face?
The chick. Oh no, that's not her. No. I thought that was Ollie's little girlfriend for a second. I was like, yo.
And then so I mean, I'm not saying. I mean, obviously, like, this is a total trend in the whole TikTok space in general.
Well,
right?
it's a trend in social media in general.
Absolutely right. It's like, because that stuff does garner a lot of likes from, the male body, I guess, or whatever, right? Like, we are hardwired to respond to these types of things. Like, it's in our DNA. It's like why is a bamboo's ass red? You know what I mean? Like, it's hardwired that way so that the bamboo, like, look at that shit, man. Oh, shit, look at that ass over there. I got to get to it, right? It's, like, in our nature. And so it's like they're pulling on this, both the ladies and the algorithms, all that. But my point is that's what it's become now. Is like that's the game is if I can just show more skin, right? Or if I wear something tighter, my likes will go up. My likes will go up from the people that know me, right? Because they're going to like that. And then the algorithm picks that up as traffic, as in like, oh, okay, this is something that's valuable to people and they want to see it. And then so that gets proliferated. Then I feel like that influences the rest of the gang. So then they see, wow, Kim K get more likes when she do this and that or whatever. I'm going to try that. What happens to you? Same thing. Then all of a sudden now we're getting to this point where that's the thing. I noticed this in TikTok. We talk about it a lot. When it first started and was getting big, like it was cool. It was just fun and all that stuff. But then it came like, well, if I show a little more cleavage, I get more likes. I get more algorithm. This happened in Twitch. We saw this in Twitch streaming too.
We saw this in Twitch real
right?
big.
Right? Like when we're streaming, all of a sudden, if you go in any homepage, hey, try and clown me right now in the comments if you want to. Go to any homepage,
any
on
game,
anything, on any whatever, and what are you going to see? You're going to see a bunch of titty hanging out, right? And it's just like, I'm not knocking the women for trying that or wanting to do that, but it's just interesting, and we have to ask ourselves kind of, what is this doing to our society?
Yeah, we as a society have created OnlyFans, and OnlyFans is huge until what was it? Bella fucked it up.
Yeah,
Bella came in and did an OnlyFans that was non-pornographic, and then they had to start saying like you can only give up to $50 in like a donation per thing. They fudged up the rules a lot
Yeah.
right after Bella came in and made like a couple mil off of it in like a day.
Yeah.
But before that, and still to this day, it is a huge platform.
Oh,
and it has its fingers in everything. You know, I follow the Magic the Gathering community very closely, and there are 6 or 7 Magic the Gathering themed ladies who have OnlyFans who their whole content is, yes, I like the same video game and card game as you, but I'm also naked.
Yeah.
So please give me $5 a month.
Right.
And I'm not knocking the hustle. But power to
the people. Yeah.
Empowerment is fine.
Yeah.
I am cool with whatever you want to do to make money.
Yeah.
But it's the cultural shift
That's what
that
I-
has an impact on the children that we do need to consider. It's the classic, think about the children. Think about the kids. Like, I agree. Think about the kids, but we haven't thought about them for the last 20 years. When Britney Spears came out at 18 wearing a short micro skirt and a tied up tank top talking about, oops, fuck me again, like, and then getting on stage, you know what I'm saying? Like, that leads directly to Miley Cyrus twerking on Robin Thicke, which leads directly to Bad Baby twerking on Instagram for followers. Like, all these things fall into each other like dominoes. There is no like, well, you know, I'm going to yell at this lady for making an OnlyFans. Like, no, don't yell at that lady for making an OnlyFans. She is a symptom of the disease.
Of the entire culture. And
not to say that it's a bad thing. I'm just saying when it affects the children, you do have to kind of step back and be like, oh, okay, now the kids are doing the adult things. We need to kind of step in here.
Yeah. And so that's what we'll be talking about today on this episode of 3 Averagely Intelligent Dudes discussing dangerous ideas. And as you can tell, it's going to be a really dangerous one. We're going to be talking pretty much about that in general, how sexuality has changed in our culture, how it's perpetuated and proliferated through social media.
Yeah, children's use of all these different social media apps.
And how that's just affecting our society and culture in a whole. And so I'm really excited about that. I would love to start this conversation because I think all 3 of us are on the same wave here about, like, we talk about a lot of things on this channel and we have our own personal opinions, but I don't really give a shit. I mean, I'm just putting that out there. Like I said, I don't care what you do with your body. I don't care. Like, I'm a libertarian, so, I mean, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want to do, and I would encourage you to do the same on your end. But it is interesting, I think, to discuss these topics and see how all those individual choices add up to how our society operates and behaves as a whole, and whether or not that's kind of helping or hurting us, you know? Like, I think about this often in my own personal life. You know, I make decisions. Like I said, I live in a free country where I get to make all the decisions I want to, do anything I want to. But those decisions always have consequences, right? Like, they have consequences in my personal life, whether I feel better or act better or become better, or if I, you know, get to a lesser place or feel worse or do worse, by my own standards. And so I think that happens on a macro scale too in society, you know?
I would agree.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyways,
what's funny too is like, we're going to mention all these, and we have mentioned all these kind of in the pre-show leading up to this, TikTok and Instagram Reels and all these other things. We're so old, we didn't even mention Snapchat.
Yeah.
And Snapchat is one of the worst offenders.
Is it?
Because not in the stories, but in the messages people send back and forth, which, by the way, we think they disappear. They don't disappear.
Nah, nothing disappears.
Snapchat's got all those snaps,
That's
all
true.
those little videos
Damn,
that all these 11-year-olds are sending back and
true.
forth. Snapchat has that data.
Big true.
Now, is that child pornography? Is Snapchat hoarding child pornography?
I was just thinking about that. When you said that, I was like, I could see some sort of a RICO type situation coming in. Not obviously with conspiracy to embezzlement or anything like that, but in the same sense that you could come, like, could somebody bring a child pornography lawsuit or charges against Snapchat for having all of these things, and it brings up the whole idea of like, well, we're a platform, not a publisher, and it brings up a whole lot of like legal questions and shit like that.
But they hoard the data.
Exactly.
So if you have the data,
like if an individual was caught with even a tenth of those images, you'd be going to jail for child pornography.
A tenth of those images would be an island worth of servers.
Right.
That's how much traffic this app has.
And so, it begs the question.
So profound right now.
It begs the question about what kind of rules we set for entities and individuals.
Yeah, because like if I was to send you a text, right, and I was underage and it was pornographic in nature, that would be digitally what do they call that? trading or whatever. It would be like child pornography. I would be trading it, a transaction digitally, and that would be against the law. But if it's Snapchat and a child sends it to another child and it goes away, then there's no proof. So they use that. That is a major thing. Sure. But then this, like I said, this is crazy because your text messages are saved by like the NSA or the CIA or whoever. Like there's that data.
The phone company.
The phone company. They can retrieve that. Yeah. Right? So now we're talking about everything we do as a society. If you're underage and you're doing something like that, it's all saved by the phone company, by Snapchat, by whoever the fuck. It's saved. Like even if you just take it with the camera on your phone and show somebody, like the camera on your phone is accessible to these places, to the NSA, to the CIA, to whatever entity.
To now Facebook.
Facebook
has now even taken control of the data on your camera.
Yeah, so if you're sending through Facebook Messenger, the point I'm trying to get to is all of these companies are hoarding this material that is highly illegal to not only own, but especially to distribute. Are they distributing it? We don't know. Are they selling that? They sell every other piece of our data. Yeah. Are they not selling our personal pictures?
Interesting enough too. It's just like, how do they even? Yeah. It's very interesting, and it's very weird to see. Like you said, you guys bring up really good questions that obviously we don't have the answer to.
Dangerous questions.
But it's I never even thought about it. I never even really thought about the fact that they are collecting all of our Snapchat nudes. But, I would love to take this conversation backwards a little bit, and start kind of from, not the beginning per se.
But the challenges.
But, just because we're acting like this is a new phenomenon, I just think it's something that's been happening, right? It's a trend, but that is being accelerated by our, more interconnectivity, right? Like the world is more connected, and so it's being accelerated a little bit. But this idea of kind of displaying your sexuality or just your body, I guess, is not like a new thing. Like we said with Britney Spears, it goes back further than that. Sex sells, right? It has been a thing since, marketing started, I guess,
Even in major movies. Stanley Kubrick's second or third film was Lolita, an adaptation of a book by a Russian novelist, or I don't remember exactly. But I did some research because I was really taken aback. Because I love Stanley Kubrick. And I was like, why is Stanley Kubrick doing a film about a 60-something-year-old German guy who moves to America and starts fucking a child? Like, that's crazy to me that that film would even be made, let alone made in the 60s. Yeah. But it was a big hit.
Yeah, it was, and you bring up a different question, too, here that is a little bit different, because I was just talking to my other friend about this with rap music and stuff, and he's, like, kind of now starting to renounce, rapping about killing people and fucking bitches and all this stuff. And I was just like, and he was kind of, because I was kind of clowning on him for this, and then he was kind of getting on me about like, well, how come you never said anything when I was doing all this stuff, right? And I was like, honestly, I was like, are you killing people? Because like I was like, if you're killing people and transgressing against women, then I have a problem. But if you're artistically expressing the realities of life, I think that that's what art does well. Art portrays what life is like so that we can ponder these things and interpret them. Even kind of like we're trying to do right now, this is even a form of art in that sense, where we just, display what is a reality. Yeah. When you hear like a lot of these rappers who are doing that gangbang and talking about shooting and killing and all this stuff, like they'll tell you, this is the life that I grew up in. Like, this is what I actually saw. This is what happened to me every single day. So if you don't like it, well, then you should change it in society, but don't like come after my art, like my actual truth, because it makes you uncomfortable. Hell, it made us uncomfortable having to live in it. So, that's what I think of when I see something like that, because the reality is that 60-year-old dudes do be preying on little kids out here, and that does, like, those types of relationships, as gross or disgusting or as wrong as you think they are, happen, and so I think that sometimes art tries to shine light on those things and bring those to society's attention, because we love to try and shove that stuff in the corner and pretend like it's not happening.
I would also like to make the point that sometimes those artists who are making those things are they themselves transgressing upon women. And the perfect example of this, and not a lot of people know about it, Louis C.K., amazing comedian, great TV show. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Louis, but it was a great show on FX, great comedy show, very smart. he was making a movie when he got canceled by the Me Too movement. For those of you that don't know, he was doing some inappropriate stuff like on the phone, or like I think he jerked off into a bush in front of somebody that was like his subordinate. It's just really weird shit. And it was a lot of like, I'm your superior, you're my subordinate, so I'm going to kind of make you do this, make you be here. And as he's doing that, he's about to release a film. So he gets Me Too. The film never comes out. Well, the film does come out. It got like released on like YouTube or something, or somebody put it out there to the world. It was a black and white film starring Chloe Grace Moretz and Louis C.K. And it was about Louis having a daughter who had just turned 18, who was very beautiful, played by Chloe Grace Moretz. And he was like a high-powered guy in show business, her father, played by Louis C.K. And he's kind of a pushover. And in the film, his boss is a 75-year-old Hollywood producer who begins to date his 18-year-old daughter. That's the whole premise of the film. It's called I Love You, Daddy.
Interesting. Weird.
Isn't that strange? And I
what's he trying to say?
Exactly. So like I was like, well, maybe it's just a funny comedy. So I was doing the thing where when you watch, you just pull ahead a couple of minutes and just check out the different scenes. It wasn't a good film at all. It wasn't really even that funny. I mean, I probably missed a ton of punchlines by doing that, but it seemed like the overall joke of the movie was Louis wanted the same thing that the old guy wanted, but couldn't have it with his daughter. And at the end of the film, he tries to get with her best friend and she rejects him. That was the whole fucking punchline of the fucking film. Weird, and I was like, this is so bad. This is almost worse than Lolita, the Stanley Kubrick film from the 60s, which was pretty bad. And I still have yet to be able to watch. I tried to watch Lolita. It's very fucked up. So once you get to about the halfway 3/4 mark, when there's an active relationship between the old man and the young girl, it gets very weird. You could tell they've cut scenes. And I went back and researched
it. Wait, they did like a lot too much.
I went back and researched it. They did. They cut like 20-something minutes before they actually released it out to the world. So
when the suits get a hold of it and they're like, yo,
it gets really, and like this is one of those rabbit hole things where it's not really a rabbit hole, it's just our culture, but it goes really deep and you can go into some really dark depths with it.
See, and that's interesting though. So like you said, there is this kind of like where it's like, this is too much, right? Like there's people who are kind of gatekeepers of that and say like, deciding where that line is of too much to show or whatever like that. And obviously I think, back in the 50s and before then, that line was pretty fucking strict.
Yeah.
But I think since the dawn of modern society, I mean, I don't really know. It's not like I've studied these things.
I would say turn of the century is
right?
the big,
you know what
the
I mean?
big
Like
one
the
when it was like, whoa.
60s and 70s is when all this started popping off, the embracing of your sexuality. Because you have to remember, I mean,
I disagree though. What about like flapper girls and stuff in the 1920s and stuff?
Have you ever seen like what flapper girls wore or anything? I mean, it's nowhere close to what people were doing in the 70s and the 60s. I mean, people were just walking around naked.
No, I feel that.
I mean, people have been trying to push the boundaries of accepting your sexuality in society forever. I mean, you can go all the way back to, a lot of people laugh and snicker at the small penises on the statues from ancient Greek sculptors and stuff like that. But if you go into research, you actually find out that the people in society, it was actually worse for you to have a large penis because it was seen as being brutish and barbaric. And it was like a symbol, like you were like the Khans or the barbarians across the way that would come. It was a lower class thing. They preferred smaller penises and less sexuality, and you could say that, you could say that there's been a very slow but very constant progression of the dissolution of traditional values in society. Values like marriage or having children or, having respect for your body or whatever. And that's all been, the definitions of those things change over time as the definitions of everything change over time. And so I think now what we're seeing is, like you said, an acceleration of it through social media and stuff like that. And it's being filtered out to more and more and younger people, which is what I think the people in the 50s, the conservatives who used to be trying to censor movies, the SEC, and censor video games and stuff like that, they were trying to keep these things from spilling out into just broad society because they were like, look, grown adults can do whatever they want, but we're, like you said, we're thinking of the children. We're thinking of how this being exposed to these things might change the perceptions of people without giving them a chance to understand what's fully going on.
You hit a really good point there. You said like it goes back, right?
All the way.
All the way. And one of the things that immediately jumped into my head, if you look at a picture of men from, say, the 20s, 30s, 40s, everyone's wearing a suit and everyone's wearing a hat. Okay? And you look at the women, and everybody's wearing like nice like dresses and things like that mostly, right? Or like longer skirts. But you still had burlesque shows. You still had flappers. You had these modern, or whatever you want to say, whatever word you want to use, women who would expose more of their skin. And that was pushing the boundary at the time. So you have like the back end and the top end, you know, pushing the boundary and dressing it appropriately. And it moves this way along the time frame to where you get to the 90s and men aren't wearing suits and hats, but they're still wearing like baggy jeans and like big shirts. And then women go to exposed midriff and low cut pants. And then you go all the way until now and you have skin tight jeans on men and leggings and bare midriffs and sports bras on women as the normal everyday clothing. So you see that shift moving.
But I would like to also, if you take it back further, like we were saying, it didn't start at like a high where it was like everybody, like, because you do talk about like the statues and stuff, and that was completely acceptable, and that was art to depict somebody fully naked. And then I think about before clothes were even invented, no, not before clothes were invented, but I mean, we've always been trying to cover ourselves. But I mean, like, you know, I think it's more of a bell curve, right? It's like we started off naked and then we grew up to be like, okay, we value being clothed more and kind of concealed. And then that kind of reached a peak where it was like, the more concealed you were, the better, right? The more affluent you were, you had the ability to clothe yourself.
It took you like 2 hours to put a dress on.
Right, you know what I mean? Yeah, exactly, right? You know, so that was like a nobility thing in the sense of look how long and flowy and cool in my dress is.
Look at how much fabric I can afford.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Look at how much fake hair I can put on my head.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And then now we're starting to see a fall back from that where it's like, okay, now we are trying to, you know, lessen that. And so, I mean, I don't necessarily think I don't know. It's just tough for me. It's hard for me to call it a bad thing. I don't know, because I do get what people are saying. When we started in the 60s and all that, and then now to today, what they're trying to say is like, I started naked, right? Like I am naked. Like sex is a thing. That's what human beings do since the dawn of time, right? So why are we treating it like it's this thing that has to be shamed or shunned or hidden from? But I think, like you were just mentioning the point that you were making, and I think the point that we're going to be trying to make today is it comes back to, again, the kids, right? Yeah. It comes back to the idea of what would you rather be proliferated as the mainstream, right? As like what is socially acceptable and like normal, and then what is you choosing on your own behalf to go outside of that, right? Nowadays, I think it's more like they're influenced at a beginning age, at a very young age, to be that way, to be the burlesque girl, to be the flapper girl, to be that, like, you know, whatever, to sell yourself sexually, to you know, deem your worth in society by the size of your ass and tits, right? Yeah. And that, I don't think, is a healthy message to proliferate to young kids who don't know what is the difference, right? So I like you said, I think that it's weird when society shames a woman for choosing that, right? Like you should not, you know, if she wants to choose that, that's fine. But I don't know about if it's healthy for us to make that the standard normal.
And we're also still playing into men and what men want. That's part of it. That is part of it. Because if you look at, and I don't blame video games for things, because there's video games where you drive around in a clown car and blow up other cars, and we don't see that happening out on the road. Sure. So you can't just say like, well, video games make people do things. Yeah. But they do influence our culture. And I can think back to like 2004 era, whatever, like my like high school era, and like the popular games were the fighting games where girls' titties bounced. Yeah. Which was like a new thing in like, they had it in sprite animations around 2000, but it didn't really happen until like the 3D era of fighting games where every single girl has mega giant super titties and they just bounce everywhere as you beat the shit out of them. And it's like, we've come a long way in our society, but are still showing in our video games like the most popular. If you would say that Fortnite is the most popular game in the world, and I know I'm not trying to take it into the discussion about violence, but in the sense of like, what are we giving to our kids? Like, what are they consuming? It used to be a lot of titty bouncing. Now the most popular game in the world, you jump out of a school bus, pick up an M16, and kill everyone around you at the school. Yeah. And it's the most popular game in the world. And then we're like, man, why are there so many shootings in America? And it's like, well, I mean, I'm not saying the video games cause it. I'm just saying they love that content in America.
Yeah.
They consume the shit out of that content. If you have content where people are wearing bubblegum pink and picking up machine guns and shooting other people, you're talking about like the most popular animes.
Yeah.
You're talking about the most popular video games.
I think it's an outlet for people. Again, you know, personally.
Murder Simulator.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I can
because I mean,
I'm
just you know, we're taking this into a broader discussion of like how art is interpretive of reality. But I love this conversation because I always think of that too. Like you've thought about killing people. There's been times in your life where you're like, God, I wish I could just. You know what I mean? And then so for you to have a digital outlet where you can do that and there's no consequence to real life, I fucks with that. You know, that's why I fucks with pornography and things like that, because I would much rather a dude be getting his sexual frustrations out on a video than going out here and trying to, you know, snatch up a girl to get it done.
Desensitizes
You know?
people a bit.
But it does desensitize people a little bit. And I get, like you said, that is a real fact of it. You know, it seems like in the 50s or in the 60s, we started to challenge that gatekeeping and say like, hey, look, we want to make the choice. You know, we want to decide more so the people want to decide what's acceptable and unacceptable.
Burning their bras.
Right,
Yeah, you remember
exactly.
that?
Yeah, well,
Women burning their bras.
Sure.
Yep.
And like I said, I think that was powerful because at the time, men were using that to oppress women. And, you know, it did come from a place of you're less than or lower than us and you'll do what we say or don't say or whatever. And
it
so,
is for the men. Whatever you're doing is for the men, not
right,
for you.
And so that I get that part of the movement. But I think now we've seen it come too far on the other side where, you know, now the internet comes along and that blew off the doors essentially of like, you know, like you said, it's one thing to be like, all right, we want to move the line. But then to just come through and erase the line completely was like, whoa, like that's very interesting where we now have this marketplace that is completely unregulated, completely anybody can show anything or do anything. And, you know, I'm always for that. Like I said, I hate regulation. So I don't like when people tell me what I can and can't do. But I think that that's where that puts more responsibility on us as the people using these things to decide, like, is this something that we should be using it for?
You hit a good point with regulation and restriction. And my counterpoint to that is that if you have a TikTok and you're a child and you set it up, unless your parents come in and change all your settings, which we all know that if you're an adult in their 30s and your kid wants a TikTok, it's going to be a little bit difficult if you're not into those social media worlds to access the app, understand it, go into the settings and do all those things. So there's a bit of a barrier to entry there. But the point I'm trying to get to is that anybody can duet with your child. Mm-hmm. If your child makes a sexy TikTok dance, any man with a TikTok, any woman with a TikTok, any person with a TikTok can then take that and duet with it and have an almost direct conversation with your child. So if you have a 10-year-old who's doing big booty bank drops, then some 40-year-old man's going to come through and do a duet with her. And what happens next? Law and Order SVU. They're going to call Olivia Benson because some shit's going down. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a real thing that happens on a pretty large scale. And you can go back to Catch a Predator.
Yeah.
Same fucking thing, bro. Yeah. And if you had, I'm sure they're still doing it to this day. It's just not televised, but I'm sure TikTok, Instagram, there's probably a lot of To Catch a Predator shit going down on there.
Dude, I ain't gotta say that because, I mean, you remember back when we were kids, and you probably remember too, I mean, like chat rooms? You know, like that's how they were getting these cats from the start, right? Like chat rooms was the very beginning.
Yep. Age, sex, and language.
Right, exactly. The very first question was a location. But like ASL, like what's
location,
your age,
right.
what's your sex, and what's your location?
Yeah.
Why is that? Why was that important? Why,
Yeah.
Like of all the things you could get to know about somebody, why was how old you are, and then are you a male or female, and where are you? How was that important so that, you know, I guess essentially there's potential for us to link up in some way or whatever. And then it was all kids. Right? It was just all kids. Like I was probably 12 maybe tops.
Yeah, 12, 13.
Yeah,
you had little internet
tops.
girlfriends and
like,
shit like that.
Oh, dude, hell yeah. I was dating a little screen name and stuff and chatting back and forth, and it was cute. And that was the beginning of like access to and unfettered. You know, like not only is it's unfettered and access and exposure, but under anonymity too.
Yeah, anonymity.
Yeah, exactly too. So I mean, now we're getting that on a hyper scale where now not only is it just my words, but I can also show you what you could be getting. And I just, if people will prey on you in those chat rooms, what do you think's happening in these kids' DMs? You know,
yeah,
like,
what do you think's happening on Snapchat, TikTok,
all these things? Like, because you're talking about duetting, that's at least public where everybody else can see what you're doing and talking and saying to that kid. But the DMs, we have no idea what kind of messages our kids, a lot of us, as somebody who's raising an 11-year-old in today's society, like I constantly think, man, I need to go over there and get through, like scroll through her DMs real quick and just, you know, make sure that I don't know who's talking to them and who's, you know, hey, I love that TikTok you did. You know, could you do one personally for me? You know, like, can you just send me a personal TikTok thing? And these kids aren't going to think, well, that's weird. You know, why would he want to see me, you know, do a booty dance, you know, whatever. But to them, they're like, oh, cool, I got a new fan. I should, you know, do what my fans want me to do. I should, you know, give him this TikTok or whatever, or do whatever it is.
And we also, you know, something else in that same realm, and I'm not trying to derail, but there's role playing. You know, like I've known a lot of, you know, girls in their early 20s who, when they were younger, they were like, oh, I would constantly role play. And it was like they would have some TV show they like or some movie series or whatever. Like I knew a girl who's really into Pokemon. So what she would do is she would go onto these internet forum fan sites, and they would basically just write long stories back and forth where they're playing different characters. And they're living through these characters. And then they're chatting as these characters. So what they're doing is they're putting on a mask and saying, I am now this character in this film series or television show or video game, and they're allowed to do whatever they want because now they're wearing the mask. So if you're wearing the mask of a you know, whatever character you are, and that character does something, you're living vicariously through them. You're role playing. That's the whole purpose of it. It's what adults do in the bedroom. And now it is trickle down into fan fiction and all these other areas of the internet where a child can be like, oh, I'm this very sexy Animorph, and I'm going to go into a chat room with 20 other Animorph people, and we're going to have sexy conversations about being Animorphs. And like those 20 other people might not be children. They might be grown ass people who are having role play. They're role playing with other. It's very dangerous. And having seen people who were in that world and how into it they get, you know, the girl I knew in her 20s was like, she was on multiple different websites and forums where she was multiple different people. It's almost like schizophrenia to me. It's very, I couldn't understand it. And like, eventually I was just like, you do you. I don't want anything to do with this. Like, you know, trying to show me and like explain it to me. I was like, I'm good.
Get you into the game.
Yeah, I'm good. And as a writer, she was like, oh, it's a great exercise. And I'm like, what do you mean exercise? Y'all are just like writing.
I mean, but it is. I mean, like role playing is I mean, Dungeons and Dragons, like I said, you know, like this has been going on since.
But like I've never in my life, and I love a lot of media. I love Mindhunter, but never in my life have I been like, you know what I want to do? I want to pretend I'm one of the characters.
Because that's one of the biggest things. Cosplay is one of the biggest.
That's a great point.
Pullers on all these platforms.
And
like,
what is cosplay? Hypersexualized.
Oh, 100%.
Hypersexualized versions of people.
There
are some cosplays.
It doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yes,
not always.
But,
not always.
But go look at the top cosplayers.
Yeah, no, honestly.
The top cosplayers
I understand what
all
you're
have
saying.
giant titties hanging out. The number one cosplayer was that one girl. She fucking fell off the internet, but she was some blonde girl with giant titties who was like the cosplayer.
I gotta add something here to this too, as I've been listening to us talk about this. This is not just females, right? So it's not just women that are
That's a fair point,
the perpetuators of this and or the victims of this. You know, hell, I am at fault for doing this very thing, like the very thing that we're talking about. I often show myself on social medias and everything with far less clothes than you would ever see me out in public. And, you know, like I've been known to post in fucking Calvin Klein, like, you know, underwear essentially. So, you know, I think men do it too. You know, it's not just women. Men do this a lot where it's just it's using our body for social influence.
Thirst trapping.
It's thirst trapping is what it is. It's 100% that. It's like, I want validation or fame or influence in society, and I'll use my body to get it. And that helps you on a personal level. You know, I get that. That's great. You know, it helps me on a personal level. That's fine. But you also got to think each one of us now. Back in the day, it was the SEC that held the standard, or it was the regulators that held the standard. But those entities do not exist anymore in the sense of like their ability to actually do that. So now that standard falls on every single one of us, and we all have to understand that every time we do that, we're setting the standard.
Yeah,
we're
it's not
saying,
so much about
this
that
is
content.
what it is. Like, this is what is acceptable and okay and to do, and somebody else is going to look at that and say, I want to do that too, or look how well that worked for them, and they're going to model that. And I don't know if like, where do we stop the buck on that?
Well, we are the content now. It used to be they would regulate the video games or regulate the movies, and they still do, but we're the content. Nobody's scrolling Instagram feeds like looking at TV shows. They're looking at people.
And here we go with the cosplay stuff. Like, number one is some, you know, big cleavage hanging. That's cool. But then a lot of people are just doing cool costumes. We got cool regular ass people. This is just hashtag cosplay on Instagram. So, I mean, you know, there's 49 million entries here. Like you were saying, people love to replay or role model their favorite characters and whatnot. But then it does get to, like, you know, the anime style, like, you know, more hentai version of stuff. And then even, you know, like I said, like, this is such another weird thing too about how these things portray people's bodies. Like, that is just so grossly unrealistic.
Yeah, if we were to go into the realm of how anime portrays young girls, there is a whole lane of anime that's not sexual in the sense of showing nudity, but it's like the whole concept will be, oh, this is an 8-year-old girl with gigantic boobies.
Yeah, right.
And it'll be like, well, why? Like, why would you? And it's like, well, it's Japan. They can do whatever they want. And, you know, America loves that shit. We consume the fuck out of it.
I agree. And then we got pedophilia, though, on the rise, right? I mean, I don't know what the numbers are here, but...
Whoa, it's a classified DSM-5 disorder?
Wait, they're saying it's a...
Yeah, they're saying that it's... Wow.
Do you think that to be the truth?
That it's a psychosexual disorder generally
Mental
affecting
disorder?
adults? Like...
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, based off of modern society, I guess you could make that argument. But, I mean, the idea that... I mean, we have a standard in America, at least, that you are an adult and can make your own rational decisions at 18 years old or whatever.
Well, there's age of consent laws as well.
Yeah, you know, in some states, you know, in Texas, it's 17. You know, it's very minute diversions. But I think that, you know, we have to remember also that people are like living a lot longer and stuff like that. So in the past, if you were going to be like, you would be married, like the average age of marriage was in your teens, in your 20s, because you really weren't going to live that much longer. That was half your life was already gone. You were a 40-year-old in your 20s and shit like that. So the idea that it's a mental disorder seems kind of strange, because you could classify that based on society standards today. But, I mean, our brains aren't any different today than they were back then in the sense of how they operate or what triggers they trigger, you know. And you brought this up when we were talking about algorithms and the fact that, like, these things hit on a biological trigger for men. Same thing for women. Like, you see these very attractive bodies in people, and it biologically triggers the sexual reproduction of the species code in your brain. Because that's what all of your cells are telling you to do. Make sure that human beings don't die.
Right.
And the way you do that is by having sex. Yep. And now we've sexualized things, and that hit that trigger. Yep. And so I definitely agree that we're playing on that idea, you know, sex cells and stuff like that. And I think that the point that you've kind of been getting at, I think, Rod, is that now that the freedom to choose is with each individual, the freedom comes with responsibility attached to it. And I think as we've been talking, I've kind of seen a wave graph kind of, and you could start at like the dawn of time. And I see this like up and down kind of thing. You have this like, well, we're going to be very stringent on that. And then, you know, you have a backlash to that. And they're like, well, no, we want to express ourselves. And then you have a even bigger backlash to that. Well, like, no. After a while, we're going to crack down even harder on that.
Yeah, Jesus says no.
And then it's like, well, we're going to do it even more. And then you get to like stuff like the 50s where they're like, you can't show your ankles and shit. Yeah. And then women were like, fuck you, I'm going to go outside without a bra. Yeah. And then now we're at the point where, you know, there's slut walks in Los Angeles where people just walk around naked. And like, you can't arrest them because there's so many of them. It's like you don't even have enough handcuffs to arrest all these people.
It gets confusing though, because in the 50s, the age of consent laws in America, you could marry a fucking 11-year-old. So I mean, it's confusing too, because maybe in the 50s you couldn't show your ankles, but you can go down the street and be like, hey, I want to marry your daughter.
Yeah, it's very something to note though that I've always heard, and I definitely got to fact check this. That's one of the consistent taboos in all of societies, right? Is that you don't fuck with kids. It's one of the just universal. There's certain things like every society has a words, like certain words that are taboo words, you know, fuck or like curse words. Every society, they might be different words, right? But every society has a word like that, and every society is like that. You don't have sex with your kids. You don't fuck kids. You don't mess with kids. That's just now, like you said, the age it fluctuates. It can get as low as 12 and 11 and stuff. But a lot of times it's like pre-puberty, right? Like a puberty kid is like off limits, and that's just something that's universal. Nobody really, like, I'm talking, this is even in villages where they don't have structural societies and things like that. Like, it's just something that's kind of hardwired into humanity, it seems like. And so I mean, it's very true that does fluctuate, but it's also true that that's always a standard. Like, there's never been a society. Even it's so funny, you look at prisons, right, and how they treat pedophilia. I mean, here we're talking about the people who don't give a fuck. Like,
people who willingly murder people and have no thought about it.
Like, no thought about, right? So these people who have no moral code necessarily, they'll fuck you up. They literally have to put child rapists and things like that in a whole different separate prison. If you go to prison for any type of pedophilia type activity, you have to be separated from those people because they will kill you. They will kill instantaneously. Like, there's no questions asked or anything. If they find out that you're in there for touching a child or something, you're dead.
Yeah, they have a bit of a street code when it comes to that shit. Yeah. Because if you rob a man who's a grown up and you kill him, well, you know, charge it to the game. Yeah. They got me, I'm going to jail. Yeah. But that's an innocent child. That's a defenseless child. Right. So if you're attacking children, then when you get to prison, like you said, you're not going to last long.
No. And I think that I think that maybe another, to just kind of shed some light on what you were just talking about, and the idea that there's like prepubescent and stuff, I think that that's because maybe just intuitively, but we understand like sex is for a reason, right? Biologically speaking, it's to procreate the species, to create another human being. So if you do it prepubescent, she's not even like the child is not even capable of having that next stage of evolution or of procreation. So it's like there's absolutely no reason for that to even be going down. And so like if that's what I think you were hitting on with the prepubescent thing, it's like prepubescent means that you are not at the level of having the ability to reproduce. So
why would I fuck
that's the definition of puberty. It's like your body's going through the hormonal changes to be like, okay, now you're ready to reproduce. You are now at a stage that you could pass on your DNA to the next line. And if you have not reached that level, then there's absolutely no reason that you should be having sex, because that's, biologically speaking, the only reason that sex happens.
And that's something that, like you said, has been kind of inherently
you
known
just kind of for some reason, like you said, even Aboriginal societies, they're like, hey, look, man, she's too young. Yeah. Well, or he's too young. You know, I mean, you said, it's not just women.
We say that, but in a lot of those kind of like traditional societies, like if you go to Syria and you go to like the deep parts of Afghanistan, you're going to find families who are marrying their children off at 6-7 years old. But
you can't call that the same thing, because just because they're married, a lot of these people still wait till they are of age to have sex, even if they're married for years.
Because those contracts involve a lot more than just a relationship.
I'm just going off of like what I know from like what I've seen. Like I did a lot of research on people that would go from UK to Syria who would be radicalized in the UK as British-born people and then become Syrian ISIS fighters. And in multiple cases that I remember seeing, they went there and they married 8-year-olds. And it wasn't like they were going to wait until they reached puberty. Like, these motherfuckers were fucking them kids.
I mean, it's definitely...
But hold on, that's not even the point I wanted to get to. I wanted to bring it back real quick to this idea that... Fuck, I lost it.
Ah, dang.
I know, I was waiting. I was trying to get in and I lost it. It's okay.
You got too far on the Syrian.
Well, because I wasn't trying to make that point. I was just trying to slip it in there. Yeah. But, damn. I'll get back to it.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll hit you like a ton of bricks. So no, but I mean, like you said, because they're also marrying them off for a couple oxes and stuff, right? Like, so that's more of like a transaction than it is necessarily a
I mean, all marriage is a transaction.
True, very true.
Oh, I know what it was. So the basic point I wanted to make is, like, we talked about how, you know, when it is someone who's advancing on someone who's prepubescent, it's even more fucked up, because they're not even looking at them like, oh, I want to advance the human species. They're looking at them like a victim.
Yeah.
And
they want to prey on that, like.
Yeah. I was watching some of the Britney Spears documentary that just hit Netflix or Hulu. I think it's
really?
Hulu. Yeah, it's really
really
interesting. It's about the FreeBrittney movement and her conservatorship.
Mm-hmm.
But within that conversation, they show her in 1992 when she was on one of these like To Make a Star TV shows or something. And the host was a man who looked to be in his late 70s, early 80s. I mean, very elderly man, glasses, talked really like I'm an old person.
Mm-hmm.
Brittany was 10 years old, comes on stage, beautiful song, singing, deep. She had a lot deeper voice back then, and there's a whole thing about how they made her change her voice, similar to like Michael Jackson. But she comes out, sings her song, wearing a cute little like dress. At the end, they're doing the little thing where it's like they talk to the kids, and one of them's gonna win. And this old man is talking to Brittany, 10-year-old Brittany. He's like, "Do you have a boyfriend?"
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm only 10, and boys are mean.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, I'm not mean. Wouldn't you date me?"
He did not.
I am not even joking, and I'll put the clip up in here because when I saw it, I was like, "What the fuck?"
Good performances. How'd you like to be a judge tonight? I noticed last week you had the most adorable, pretty eyes. Do you have a boyfriend?
No, sir.
Why not?
They're mean.
Boyfriends? You mean all boys are mean? I'm not mean. How about me?
Well, it depends.
I get that a lot.
I mean, this is 1992, and after everything I've seen with Jimmy Savile, everything I've seen with Joe Biden. Yes.
Joe the Ghost Biden.
Yeah, all these motherfucking old white dudes, they fucking creep on children. And they don't creep on, like, post-pubescent teenage girls
Young
or
girls.
boys. They creep on the little ones.
Boys
And-
too. Let's remind them that.
Oh,
boys.
yeah.
Like,
Look
I have
at
to be careful because my kid's transgender, and I always I'm like, you're the at most risk.
Yes.
Like that because it's about that. It's honestly about that, right? They want that taboo. They want the fact that it's not allowed, and then I'm gonna do it anyways, and that it drives some type of incitement in those people, and so a lot of it's like sometimes they'll prey on boys too as well, or transgender kids.
Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, you know. Oh yeah, right. I did hear Kevin Spacey got called out for some shit like that too. So I mean, it's
tough,
so
man.
cringy.
It's tough. That's the dangerous part of this conversation is that like.
But
we
then
have to. We're facing this. We're facing this evil
and
monster.
are we now creating more of that? You know, like you said, is that becoming more acceptable? Because now, I mean, dude, think about it. Before your kids, these are now young Brittany. Maybe they said she's probably in a little skirt and doing all her like little joint. But I mean, back in the day, your kids were kids. This is something I've noticed for a long time. You know, it's like, dude, sometimes I get caught out. I don't even know. Sometimes I don't even know. I'll be on TikTok or something like, dang, that girl's cute. And then, you know, Jessica or my wife be like, yo, she's young. And I'd be like, is she? She's young? How young?
I mean, think about.
You know what I mean? I was like, how you know? I can't even tell anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, she would look just like all the other girls that I would see that are 30, 25, 20, you know. But
how
then
old is
she
Bad
could
Baby?
You know what
How
I'm saying?
old is Bad Baby?
You know what I'm saying? She was
You know what I'm saying?
fucking 14 out there with her titties hanging out just like any other grown-ass woman.
Yeah.
Doing real grown-ass woman shit. And now, like I said, how, as just a regular-ass male who's not into any of that shit whatsoever, how am I supposed to know? Yeah. How am I supposed to know? And so here you are, you're getting baited into actually looking at this kid in the sexual nature, and you don't want to, but it's just, again, on the biological nature, you're like, yeah, that looks sexy.
Well, the algorithm's putting it in front of your face.
And you're just liking it. Hey, dang, you might holler at these people. You might develop an attachment to this person based on these premises that have been set forth, just to find out later that they're 16, right? And then now, whereas if you knew that up front, never would have even
but
look
now
the other,
society's
right?
gonna put a
but
big
now
fat label on you.
Maybe you got a whole attachment to this girl or something, right? And then now she's like, oh, by the way, I'm 16. And now you're in a moral dilemma because you're already fucking heavily invested and interested. And you're like, but I love her. And then now you got to make, you know, choices, real heavy decisions on like whether or not you're going to walk away from that or whatever, which, you know, hopefully all of us out there will walk away from that. But it's just, look at how sticky of a situation that is, where it used to not be like that as far as I can remember. Like when I was young, even as early as my early 20s, but even when I was a teenager, like I knew the difference between a child and an adult. I could look at them and say, that's a grown-ass woman. That's a kid. You know, this is a young kid. It was in the way that they were dressing, the way that they would act. They weren't wearing no makeup. They weren't doing no damn twerking dances.
The
or any of
Olsen
that
twins
shit.
weren't doing the big bank challenge.
You know what I'm saying? Like that just wasn't happening. And so these things are very adult in nature, right? It's what we talk about. It's the whole, that you're preying on the fact that it's sexual in nature. That you cannot tell me that any girl on that homepage does not know that they're doing something sexual in nature.
Yeah.
That you know what I'm saying? You got to know what you're doing there. And so you can't say like, oh, well, this isn't about that. It's definitely about that. And then so, younger people are going to look at that and say that this is the way to do it. That's the thing about it is you as an adult, what you're doing. You're saying, okay, cool. I can make money. I can make likes. I can make fame. I can make whatever influence off my sexuality. But a kid doesn't know that. So when a kid gets on there, 7 years old, this is what they think the world is, right? They're
what does the world
through,
want from me? They want me to turn around and shake my butt cheeks.
This is what it means. And then, gosh, this is the nastiest part, or the craziest part about the TikTok thing in specific, is it's designed for you to copy other people. Like, that's the whole name of the game, is to see somebody do something, monkey see it, monkey do it. And so now these kids aren't even taking it upon themselves. It's already built in and encouraged for them. If I see this, and you will, and it's going to get 2, 3, 5 million likes because of nature, like we just talked about, then the algorithm, dumbass little algorithm, doesn't know any better, says this is what we want to see, this is what we want to do, and we'll push it to the top. And so that kid sees that and says, wow, this is what it is. This is the new trend. Let me get it. Big bank, right? And to them, doesn't matter.
And now they're going to get, because that's a popular challenge, they're going to get the negative feedback loop.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, negative feedback loop, but you get the idea I'm saying, which is like, okay, I see this person do this. I follow this trend. Now I get a bunch of likes.
Now I go up.
So then boop, 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 it cycles
what do I do?
back
now
around.
What should I do to reinforce
do more and more of the same thing.
More of that.
So it's just nothing but big booty, no bra challenge. Like, that was the one that got me when I was looking at something on YouTube and they were talking about how fucked up it was that they had kids doing a no bra challenge. And I was like, you got to be fucking shitting me. There's fucking 14 and 15-year-old girls on TikTok, hashtag no bra challenge. I'm like, we've gone beyond now. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. And I'm not a conservative person.
I'm not either.
But based on the parables of the Bible, we're literally living through this kind of thing.
We're going way off the rails with it, honestly. I mean, I've seen it in a lot of things too, where, maybe it just started to approach my personal line. Like I said, I understand everybody's got a different thing. Like, some people, they can't even fuck with half this. You know what I mean? People keep running. Like, if you want to run and work out and all that stuff, with little to no clothes on, just don't do it in front of my house. We have kids here, and essentially, so that's what they're saying is like, even athletic wear of like you said, a girl might come running by in a sports bra and yoga pants, and is obviously more conservative person, and they were just like, yo, don't bring that shit around my house. Big ass sign in the yard, right? And so I'm like, everybody's line's different. Some people, yoga pants is just too much, whereas other people can go all the way to like, as long as you got some pasties on your nips. Some people say fuck it. Some people say, yo, it's all here. So I get it, and it started to encroach on my personal line, whereas now I'm starting to see it. I'm like it was almost like coming up for air, really, in a sense. It wasn't even like, I know, like one day it just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was just like, oh shit, is this cool? Like, this is what we're doing these days? Like, is this how we want to be? Like, is this really healthy for us? And is this, like I said, do we really want our ladies to think that their bank, their source of income, their source of whatever value in society is their ass? And then, like, isn't that the whole thing you were fighting against? Isn't that the whole thing you didn't want us to put on to you, was this idea that it's your body that's valuable? Yeah. But yet, not everybody agrees. And then now the people who don't agree, that's become the mainstream.
You make a good point about the coming up for air thing, because like, I had seen it in culture and social media and the shift in movies and music and things like that, just like everybody else, but it hadn't really hit with me. And then, when I was living in LA and COVID-19 happened, I drove back to North Carolina. I ended up working in a grocery store during COVID for that whole summer into the fall of 2020. And while I was working there, school was shut down. Like, when I started working again in April, there was no school. And when it started up again, it didn't really start up again. So not only was it the end of the school year and the whole summer that I worked there, but also the start and fall, which means I was there in a grocery store during the day and it was filled with kids. with their parents or without their parents. It was filled with high schoolers, middle schoolers. It was a constant stream of kids. And I did notice, I was like, why are all these kids dressed like they're in a porno shoot?
Yeah.
They're dressed like stripper waitresses. And it was like getting to the point where it was like really in your face. It was constantly in your face.
Yeah.
And working with an all-male crew, like we would joke about it all the time, but like, Jesus Christ, bro. It'd be like a mom and a dad and their 2 daughters. And the 2 daughters would be wearing like crop tops cut to show underboob and like the tightest leggings you can imagine.
In my family doing the same thing.
Yeah, and it's like
she's young.
And we would literally be talking to each other like, would you let your daughter do that? I wouldn't let my daughter do that. Would you let your daughter?
I was sketched just trying to let my kid get nails. I was like, what do you need fingernails for? What the fuck are you talking? You play in the dirt. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're out here just running around. Like, why would you need that?
Want to be grown.
That's the standard. You know, that's the standard. And we're seeing it. And I mean, you know, whether you're conscious of it or not, it's happening for sure. And I think that's what I was hoping to bring to this conversation, is just to get everybody to think about that in a sense and say, like, is this something that I do value, or is this something that I'm getting stuck in that feedback loop and not noticing it? You know, because that's the thing about an algorithm or about any of this stuff that is the internet. Is like it can become the loop, it can become the norm without you even looking at or thinking about it or noticing it. And then you'll wonder, like, when your 12-year-old comes home with a 20-year-old boyfriend, you're gonna be all fucking out the shit about it.
How did this happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's been going on underneath the surface this whole time.
So it's like, and you're not gonna be able to tell them no. You're not gonna be able to be like, this is like, they're gonna be like, what are you talking about? This is 100% normal. Yep. You know, this is 100% what everybody's doing. And like you said, it's in fashion, it's in our trends, it's in all that stuff. You know, this was a big thing that came out just recently, and everybody was kind of up in arms about it. But you know, I think this is art mimicking reality.
Yeah, it's about a conservative young girl who moves to France and decides to join a twerk group.
Yeah. How old are they in this kid? In this
very, very young.
11 or 12, something like that.
Yeah. And it's just dancing, I guess, but
hypersexualized.
Not though.
Yeah, it's hypersexualized.
They're all like, "Yo, arch your back more, like kick your head." Like,
not only are there, we can just see in the trailer that these angles are ridiculous.
Yeah,
but they also in this movie, I've read quite a bit about this. A lot of reviews, a lot of critics.
Yeah.
They talk about there's nudity in this film. They talk about the dance group, I guess, that they're like fighting against shows nudity, so they want to kind of up their game to defeat them. So they show nudity.
Yeah.
And then apparently the ending is just like a twerk off.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Where they're literally grabbing their crotches and like humping the air to this audience. I also heard about there's a scene where like 2 security guards. Yeah, right there. You see that? I think that's the scene. I've seen screenshots. Right there. Look, see that dirty old man?
Yeah,
they're literally, right there. They have to dance in front of these security guards to like get out of some situation, like Scooby-Doo style. And I'm like, I get that the film is an artistic expression. I get what they're trying to say. A little bit.
I mean, this is TikTok. I mean, this is what we're saying. They're making a movie representation of what we are honestly seeing in reality.
Yeah. Like, how do you draw the line though, like between what is artistic expression and what is child pornography? Because this is riding that line between like, oh, I'm gonna expose this area I want to draw attention to, and I want to promote this type of behavior.
Yeah. But that's my point. Is it's already being promoted. You know, and honestly, I mean, like I said, I appreciate things like this in general. I mean, that's the difference between me personally and the social media and something like this, right? That's one movie. That's one body of work to overarch a theme. You know how many people are on a trend on TikTok? That is that's proliferation.
Yeah.
That's constant pushing to the point where it feels like it's normal.
Viral marketing.
Right. You know, but interesting to note here on this Cuties official trailer, 2.2 million dislikes. So, I mean, I feel like we're not alone in our assessment of this situation.
Yeah, because I want to make a distinction here, because you're saying it's like mainstream. It's like mainstream on these platforms, but it's not mainstream in the sense of like this is what most people in the world agree with or are doing. That's the point. Like it's like just because 5 million people get or 5 million likes on a booty thing, like there are so many more people that disagree with that kind of stuff than there are that agree with that kind of stuff, in my personal belief. And I think that really it comes down to the fact that, like, we've kind of hit on it a few times now, but the responsibility is now on the individual. So if you're a person who's more inclined to accept that sexuality and you feel like it's nothing wrong and it's no problem and you want to teach those kinds of values to your children, then you teach those kinds of values to your children. And like you said, there will be consequences for those actions, whatever they may be. They may be positive consequences. They may be negative consequences. But then there's also people who are like, no, I'm not going to teach my daughter to that. I'm not going to teach my daughter that she can get out of trouble by dancing in a provocative way to older gentlemen. I'm not going to teach my daughter that her wealth is based on what other anonymous entities online tell them that they want from them, you know? And so you have to draw the line yourself. There is no SEC or anything and I like this. As a libertarian, I like this. I don't like people going to the government or the SEC or anything and being like, make these people put clothes on. Sure. It's like, hey, look, man, those people don't want to wear clothes. Sorry. Yeah. You know, like if nudists take over your favorite cafe, you might just have to go to a different cafe. At what point, you know, you're gonna have to make your own decisions.
At what point do the children become individuals who are responsible for their own individual actions?
That depends on, again, that's a line that you have to draw for yourself.
Dude, that's what I said when I first saw this, when I was introduced to this idea. My very first question was, where are your parents?
Right.
You know, like not the government to do something about this.
Their parents are completely absent. That's the problem.
Even if the parents are completely involved, we're at a point in our society where a child can go to a doctor and say, I want this to happen to me, and the parents can't stop them. So at what point do we say, like, oh, well, it's the individual responsibility of that 12-year-old?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, the individual responsibility falls on everybody's shoulders. Anybody that's making a decision has responsibility. So you're talking about the doctors. Like, the doctor doesn't have to perform any sort of surgeries. The doctor can turn you away regardless of your age. A 7-year-old woman can come in and be like, I want to transition into a man. And he can be like, you know what? I don't believe in that. You're going to have to find a different doctor to do that. He's not saying that you can't do that, but he's just saying, like, I'm not going to do it. And there's many doctors that don't do that. But some doctors who are just, you know, it's just their job. They're just there for a paycheck. They're like, yeah, whatever. Surgery is one of the most profitable things for a doctor or physician to do.
That and Oxycontin prescriptions.
You know, so it's like, if that's all you care about, then that's the kind of decisions you'll make. And as parents or legal guardians of children, you have to check out who your physician is, who your pediatrician is. You have to you'll have to be way more involved in your children's lives, in your own lives, to make sure that they're doing things that you agree with. Like you said with the sign, somebody was like, I don't want my kids thinking that wearing almost nothing and see-through shit is like what we want them to do. So I'm going to try to keep them from experiencing those things. And you know, a lot of people will be like, well, you're being a dictator over them, or you're sheltering your children, and you're not letting them experience all the things that they could experience and make their own decisions. And I think it's like you said when you were trying to get your daughter to ride that roller coaster, and the woman was like, well, she doesn't have to ride it. And you were like, yes, she does. I am her parent. I make the legal decisions for her. She is not an autonomous person yet, as based on the laws within the United States that we are now living in. Yeah. So she is going to get on this roller coaster because I am trying to teach her a lesson about overcoming your fears. Yeah. And so nobody else can tell you that you can't do that with your child. You know, and they damn sure will try to, but you have to be steadfast, and you have to stand up for yourself, and you have to stand up for your beliefs. And that's the thing, is that people want to separate the freedom from the responsibility. So they're like, well, this is just freedom. And then on the back end, you know, I wonder what all of these like women that were in these like slut walks and you know, whatever, I wonder what they'll think if they happen to have a child who's a daughter, and then, you know, 40 years down the line or 30 years down the line, when the child is out there doing a bunch of whatever they would consider heinous shit. It's like, well, I didn't want her doing that. And it's like, well, she was watching. Yeah, I mean,
once that seed is planted, you don't know
how it's going to grow. Yeah, you don't know what a tree is going to look like when you plant the seed. It's just going to grow into a tree. And there's ways, you know, that's why we have you know, for people that don't know much about like growing plants or trees or anything, like if you see a tree tied up to like a post or whatever, what they're trying to do is they're trying to influence the tree to grow in a certain direction, because trees sometimes just grow sideways or whatever. And they're like, I want this tree to grow straight aesthetically. So you just give it a little bit of support. You give it something that it can grow into, if you will. And you have to do the same thing with your children. You have to do the same thing with everybody in your life. You have to give them some sort of example that, and you're saying, this is what I value.
Some type of restraint. Like, you know, that's something that science has proven time and time again, is that kids actually thrive in having boundaries and limitations, or like, you know, when they have like I said, restrictions. Not necessarily like you could be overly that too, but this idea that, you know, kids flourish because they don't have any whatever. Like kids do, they want somebody to guide them. They want somebody to, you know, let them know where the boundaries of acceptability are, because as a child you just don't know any of those things, you know. Like as adults we take all this stuff for granted because we've already been taught, and a lot of us will admit taught wrong. So it's like funny that, you know, we as adults can see that we were taught wrong, but then won't, you know, turn around and fix that for the people who come after us, you know. But essentially, you know, you have to look and say, like, you have to guide that and create those boundaries and those limitations, because I do not put that on the child. You know, like I said, I think that even as an adult, I am susceptible to following the trend. You know, I can only imagine as a 7-8-year-old trying to find out how to fit in the place in the world. You are definitely going to follow the trend. There's no way you don't.
It's just a tough conversation about childhood autonomy and what decisions are children allowed to make. And with those decisions come individual responsibility. So if you're a 11-year-old and you say, I want to transition or something, and you had parents,
or I want to have sex with this man.
Well, with that, it's a little bit different because there's a lot of laws about that. But if you're
still your choice, though.
Well, yes, it is still your choice. I get that. But then the other person that will go to jail, things like that. But when I'm talking about specifically with a child who wants to say transition and the parents won't allow it, they can, by law, go and do that. They can, by law, go to a doctor and start that process without parental approval, meaning that you have given the child individual rights to do something to their body that could affect them for the rest of their life. In some cases, sterilization. So that is a big responsibility to give what we would all consider a child. And that individual responsibility falling on those tiny little shoulders is something that we as a society and as a culture need to be aware of. And we're not so aware of it in our culture right now, especially on the woke left. The woke left is like, their body, their decision. And how far back does that slider have to go before 11-year-olds are allowed to have sexual intercourse? You know what I mean? Like, I am not trying to say slippery slope and that this leads to that. I'm saying individual responsibility in the hands of a child can be dangerous and have lasting, lifelong effects.
I agree. I just was what I was saying, that they still have the choice, because I like to differentiate this. People think that laws give you rights, or that laws create or like you said, allowed to. You're always allowed to.
Yeah, great point.
You know, you can always just do that if you fucking want to. You know, it's just like whether or not we establish clear and concise consequences for that actions, right? So if we decide that, you know, if you do this, you'll go to jail or you'll go to this or that, is kind of where laws come in.
It's
but
a form
people
of
think
influence.
but people, and it is discouraging for sure. You know, if you think that there's going to be heavy negative consequences on the back, guaranteed, right? Not just metaphorically or possibly. That's kind of what we see right here with the social media and stuff, is there are no clear, concise consequences. You don't know.
Social media has only been around for like what,
20 years,
12, 15 years.
20.
I mean, if you count like AOL and some Messenger and stuff,
MySpace
goes back to the beginning of the internet. But yeah, MySpace, so 20 years. And we don't know the lasting effects.
We don't.
We don't. We study it. We study it constantly.
It though. That's what I'm saying. We are seeing it.
We are.
Not just in this, but like, dude, when last year was a clear cut tale for that. Like when we got on, like when everybody was forced out. Because you're right. You made such a great point earlier about how it seems like, to me, somebody who lives in a world of social media, you know, and interacts daily and all the time, that's this is what's going on out here. But that's not true. Like, there's a lot of people who do not live in that world at all. There's a lot of people who don't.
Most people
even, yeah, like a general, like the
and you can, and I feel comfortable saying that just because most people are not on these platforms.
Yeah, no, I mean, most people aren't even. I mean, there's some like a 2 billion or 3 billion people on Facebook or something like that.
That's like the biggest platform, and it's barely even half of all human beings.
So there's the fake famous Netflix documentary mentioned some numbers, and one of the things they said, they were talking about Instagram users and how many of them were considered famous in the sense of like influencers. And if you start at like the 5K being a micro influencer and then go all the way up, there was something like over 150 million what people would consider famous or influencers on Instagram. Now, they set up kind of a false premise because they said, and they kind of made it seem like it was in America, but they were going by worldwide numbers. Yeah. Which was, because they were like, that means half of America's famous. And I was like, not exactly. Because we're not even including bots at this point. And the fake famous documentary does clear that up with the usage of bots and stuff like that. So they do kind of get to that point. But the point I was trying to get to was like, there are so many people on these platforms that are famous in the sense of 5 to 10,000 plus followers, meaning that they could influence culture or get people to pay for their lifestyle through Patreon or in some cases OnlyFans. So it's like we are our own television programs. We are our own sitcoms. We are our own pornos. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's been decentralized, democratized. What's the other word I'm looking for? Decommoditized, right? Yeah. Is like now everybody can do it. Everybody can be that. That's what the internet provides us, you know. But I mean, we'll definitely have to look at it. You know, 2.8 billion is the number active. For just that's just for Facebook, and that's active. Yeah. So, and that's per month. But I mean, even still, that's only 1/7, maybe, you know, 2/7 of the population ish. So,
it's just under half.
Yeah, isn't half 7 billion, or like isn't 7 billion people on the planet right now?
It's about 7.5 billion, closer to 8 maybe now. But yeah, I mean it's just under half. Just like 3.5 would be halfway if you want. So I mean, you know, it's not the majority, right? It's definitely a minority, but that number is growing every day.
Because that's just Facebook. And
that's just Facebook.
And wait until Google puts fucking satellites up in space that gives Wi-Fi to the entire continent.
Yeah, to everybody who's not allowed on there.
You know, I was doing research in 2013 for a paper I was writing for college, and I was looking up how Google was just going to float these giant balloons around Africa in the wind streams that would just give all of Africa Wi-Fi.
Yeah, internet.
And these were ideas that they were just kind of spitballing or whatever.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people who are dedicated to seeing the internet come to third world countries.
Because knowledge is power.
And, 100%.
And space is free. I don't know what that means, but I wrote it in one of my book
It means that
ideas.
Nobody's come around and claimed it for themselves yet.
Yeah, that's so true.
But they will.
They're trying.
As a matter of fact, I just saw, just as a sidebar on that, I saw a very interesting article where it was talking about how Mars, 3 different countries are going to make unmanned. No, it's unmanned. Okay. Like it's like, so China and Russia and the United States all have Martian rovers, or, you know, just machines to kind of collect data on Mars, all landing around the same time because at the end of last year there was some sort of lining up of Mars and Earth, and it made it a lot easier. They all launched within 3 months of each other because that was the easiest time to get to Mars. Yeah. And so you know, it's just interesting that like you say that like space is free, like the internet right now is free, and we're seeing what's happening with it, and then space soon will be accessible to many more people. I think SpaceX is going to have their first manned mission into space with all civilians. Like the guy who's leading it is like a billionaire CEO of a company or something like that, but it's going to be all civilians. There's not going to be any sort of military or government people involved in this mission. It's going to be 100% civilian run and operated. So it's like, that's we're going to see the same kind of issues come about in that field too, where once you give the choices and the freedoms and the accessibility to everyone, then you inherently are going to see things that you yourself do not agree with, because people do things that you do not agree with.
True.
And I think that the idea of, and that's why I think it's important to have these kinds of conversations, not because we're trying to say that Cuties is wrong or that making money off of your attractiveness is wrong, you know, but also, you have to understand that if you are a porn star with a child, your child knows what you're doing.
Yeah.
They pay way more attention than you think they do. Sure. As far as I'm concerned, I see most people's children pay more attention to their parents than the parents pay attention to their children.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's like, I mean, I'm not surprised to see the kind of results that we're seeing based on the actions that we've been taking. And I think that it's baffling to me when people are like, I'm so surprised at the hypersexualization of our children. And I'm like, why? Our adults are hypersexualized. Why wouldn't the children be hypersexualized? I mean, the children do, like, that's what children are watching us for, to learn how to be people.
Yeah.
They don't know how to be people. When you're born, you
don't have no clue.
You literally don't even know how to get food. You know, like, you just have a biological thing that's like booby in mouth. Yeah. That's how I live. But you don't know why. You couldn't articulate that. Like, a child could not articulate. And the problem, like, I think that you were talking about, you had a great point, John, when you were saying, you know, this personal autonomy or personal responsibility on these children. Some of these children, their bones aren't even hardened yet.
Exactly.
And let alone their brains being fully developed.
Exactly.
And we see the kind of dumb mistakes that grown-ass adults with fully formed prefrontal cortexes to make rational decisions make. And now you're going to undercut all of that and just go straight to a malleable child and let them decide such very... Like, it's not the same. Like, deciding to change your gender is not the same as deciding to dress like the other gender. Like, there are big differences. And I think that, and even, like, that's not dressing like another gender is not the same as choosing which clothes to, like, which shirt you're going to wear. Like, there's a lot of decisions that I think people take from their children when they should let them make them. And there's a lot of decisions that people are giving to their children that I think that they should reserve.
That's a pretty valid point, I would say.
I would agree.
Because there is a difference between, like you said, sterilization and wearing what you feel comfortable wearing because that's who you are.
Yeah.
And there should be a line there. There should be some sort of, you know, kind of not just parental thing, but maybe, and this is where you would disagree with me, but some sort of societal thing, you know, where, like, someone has a regulation per se, something like that, which, like I said, I understand where you're coming from with deregulation, libertarianism, you know, capitalism, things like that, profit incentives. But if the profit incentive, like you said, is that surgery makes them money, and an 11-year-old comes to you and says, I want to have an expensive surgery, your profit incentive is to do whatever that child wants, especially if the law allows it.
My question to that child is, like, even still, if the doctor is able to do that, how that kid get to the doctor? How's that kid, you know, leave the house? How's the kid afford that surgery?
Hey, we lock him in the room. That's what we're
Hey,
well, I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of ways
movie.
as a parent to discourage.
I remember in Home Alone where he's trying to buy all those groceries in New York, and the woman's like, "Where's your parents?" And he's like, "Not here. Sent me out to get the groceries myself or whatever." And she was like very skeptical about that because he's buying a bunch of bubble gum and shit like that. It's like, seems highly unlikely. Whereas now, you know, you're talking about doctors, and it's funny that you bring up the profit incentives because it's like, well, the 8-year-old probably is unlikely to have the money to pay for this surgery. So you'd have to go, if you're gonna circumvent your parents completely, you'd have to find some sort of alternative payment method.
I'm sure they're
like
there.
If the profit incentive is what's causing them to do it, then it's like, you got to get paid from somebody. And so maybe they're going to, like, government programs or something, like, hey, well, the government's going to pay for this surgery, so I'll just give it to whoever wants it. Yep. 80-year-olds, 8-year-olds, whatever, doesn't matter. And I think that
your parents' health insurance will pay for it, even if they don't want it to happen.
It's true. I mean, and if the kid is smart enough to, which, you know, with the internet now, they're learning a lot about a lot of things that I never learned about. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. But if you're smart and you know how search engines work and how keywords work and how to use those types of tools, you can learn how to do all kinds of stuff. And people will show you. I mean, people are out here showing individuals how to put a squeeze on the shorts of hedge fund managers, and they're also showing children how to get the information for their parents' health care that they are dependent on so that they can get surgery.
100% that is on YouTube. 100% that is in Google. If you're a 10-year-old and you say, I want to transition at 10 years old, but my parents won't let me, I guarantee you there's going to be 1.3 billion search result hits for that.
There's a whole tutorial for that.
There's
for you.
much information about any of that stuff.
Yep.
So here's a thought experiment kind of to wrap things up that I thought would be interesting. I want to give each of us an opportunity. You have full autonomous control over the internet from this point going forward. What do you do with that? Like, how do you? We'll start with Matt.
Me?
Yeah, we'll start with you and go this way. Yeah. Just given all the things that we were just talking about and just, society.
If I'm the overlord of like the internet, then I would leave it exactly the way it is. Probably I would let it be open and free. I would turn back to my child and tell them, these are the things that we as a family value. These are the things that we think make women empowered or men empowered. These are the kinds of, and I'm finding out more and more as I grow up that I would be considered a conservative person. Like, I believe in traditional family values and stuff like that. Like, I think that those are good things. And I think some people take that stuff too far, but I would allow people to make what I would consider mistakes because I don't believe that I know best for everybody else. I think that I don't even know if I know best for my child, but I'm definitely going to exercise my own personal rights to influence my child in the way that I want them to be rather than try to do that to someone else's child. I mean, your child is there for you to influence however you feel is proper and necessary.
Yeah.
And I would make it to where people have the most freedom to make their own decisions, and I would try to help mitigate the consequences on the back end as much as I can through, personal altruism, but I wouldn't try to force anybody into doing anything that I felt was better for them.
I got a good spicy answer for you.
Okay.
I think that I would implement some more things like age verification for one. And I would also want to take some of the data back that they are collecting in the sense of, let's say in this scenario, I have a kid and I don't want my kid to consume certain content. Then I would, as their parent, like to know what data they are sharing and what data they're consuming. I would want to be able to see and access that. It's not easy.
But we're talking as the overlord, not as a parent. So you're saying
as the overlord of the internet, I would want to institute data sharing with data transparency. That's a great way of saying it. So as the overlord of the internet, I would want data transparency. What are these companies keeping? Can I access it? I want to know what you have on my whatever, child, partner, whatever, and have access to those things. I would also want to see age verification pushed more.
So to caveat your point, like, what if your somebody's spouse is using that to spy on their husband and like find out if he's cheating and shit like that?
I'm thinking more so from the parental thing.
Like,
I'm thinking more so that if I have a child, I would want to have some sort of system in place rather than just parental controls where I would be able to see the data.
So if the user is under a certain age, then
Yes.
then their data would be transparent to
their parents,
to their guardians.
Yes.
Okay,
and I would also want to see age verification. So that way TikTok doesn't have no bra challenges happening with 11-year-olds posting videos. I would want to see an age verification that's not just click here if you're over 18.
Yeah.
Like if you were to have less anonymity in something like Twitter. Like let's say Twitter, it wasn't just an email. Let's say Twitter was
ID,
you.
like you send a verification.
Some sort of verification. Then your child would have to have a verification, and it wouldn't be an anonymous thing. Now, when your child is, let's say, signed up and their age is verified, now they just can't post those things. They can't consume those things because there is some sort of filter. And I think that that's a little extreme. Right? But you asked me what I would do as overlord of the internet. And what I would do is get some of this sexualization out of kids' faces, and I would want parents to have a little more control over the data. Yeah. That's what I would do.
I think I'm in the same kind of boat as both of you. Like I'm kind of halfway, right? I'm saying halfway because I want the same effect that you're talking about. But my thing is I would take on me and Mac talk about this often. It's education is the solution to these problems, and he was taking it on a more micro scale. But if I was overlord of the internet, I would essentially work that in. Like I would tweak my algorithms. All these algorithms that are geared toward. We always talk. It's always incentives. And right now the algorithms and everything are only geared towards what is most liked or most whatever. I think that I would tweak that in a sense of I would maintain a status quo. of like what is generally acceptable to the most amount of people, right? So the algorithm, the TikTok would not proliferate these booties and all these things. It would not, even if you start liking it, it would not say, okay, this is what you like, I want to give you more of what you like. It would give you the status quo of what is standard, but I also would not limit anybody wanting to go look for those other things. So I'm not going to take Pornhub off the internet. I'm not going to, you know, take these sexualizations off the social medias and stuff, but I would stop proliferating that as the mainstream. You know, I would proliferate what everybody has deemed to be the most palatable and pleasable thing, right? And so that would dumb down a lot of the things that you're exposed to and whatever. But again, like I said, I would still leave the internet as a free and open place that you can go looking for whatever it is that you want. You know,
I would as well.
So if you want to go see that, you would still be able to follow the hashtag Big Bank and see all the big banks you want to. But I would not pitch that to you as like just a standard user and say, hey, you probably like some ass in your face, or you probably like people showing off money, or you probably like killing video games and things like that. Like all that stuff I would keep kind of things you need to go looking for personally.
So kind of what you're saying is like you would have like a like if you were to go to like the explore page of a TikTok or whatever, the algorithm wouldn't serve you up necessarily everything that you've tried to hone it in on. It would just give you the standard feed. Like, this is the feed.
Shuffle.
This is, you know, like, this is some stuff that we, you know, there's some funny stuff in here. There's some interesting
news,
creative stuff, you know, like news, whatever. But then, like you said, you'd have the ability to go in and be like, hey, I'm looking for, you know, hentai women and scant, whatever.
With squids.
And then, and so it's like, hey, yeah, we got that there.
Yeah, we got titty cosplay.
But it doesn't matter how much you double tap that shit. We're not going to show you in the explore page.
You know, like that I think is the dangerous part to me. Is I look through all this stuff. It's not the fact that these things exist or that we have access to them. It's that these algorithms learn that and then they pitch. And these aren't people. Like, an algorithm's not a person. The algorithm doesn't understand, hey, this might be dangerous or detrimental to society or any of that stuff. Or, hey, is this a kid? You know, honestly, I'm down with the age verification shit. I think that that's super powerful stuff. I just, you know, I can't, because then it's like who decides what age and how far does that go
and what content is
and then
verified.
like what do you get to see, where's your privacy? It just, every time somebody makes that choice for us, it gets so sticky, because even with the Mark Zuckerberg thing and Donald Trump, it was like, I like that, but then I also don't like that, you know? So it's like, yikes. But I would just, my point is, I would take some of this power of the internet away from the machines, you know, and put it back into humans that do understand this stuff and start to like understand the consequences of that, instead of kind of like we talked about with the problem with the doctor and stuff, is the doctor will do anything for that dollar bill. Well, these companies are doing anything for that dollar bill.
Look at
they
Disney
just
Channel.
want you to stay on there. They don't give a fuck about your personal mental health, the health of society and our culture, any of that. They just want you to stay on their platform and give them more money, and that I think is just
this is translating to the real world too, and it's translating to traditional media, because you have Disney Channel, who is sexualizing their shows more. You have Disney Channel, who is a pipeline from you're a child actor, and then you move into the music, and then you become even more sexualized, and then you move into the social media stage. So you have the Bella Thornes of the world. You have all these other girls who are being abused as children, and then moving into this like sexualized world. Once they become of a certain age, they are then
Britney
pushed
Spears.
out like Britney Spears. And some of them have mental breaks like Britney Spears, like Amanda Bynes, like some of these poor Disney girls who Lindsay Lohan, who as children were almost definitely abused.
Miley Cyrus.
The list keeps going. It keeps fucking going, because these kids are sexualized. And what happens when you sexualize kids and you give them millions of dollars? They have sex. And sometimes it is forced upon them.
Justin Bieber.
It's Justin Bieber. Go watch his fucking, what was that Candy Wow Juicy what was the newest one that he did?
Lonely?
It was
Yummy.
Yummy. It was Yummy. If you watch Yummy, at the end, and this really fucked me up, because I watched the video because people on like some of the conspiracy websites were like, oh, it's about the Clintons and the Podestas, and I was
How
like,
do they make these connections?
Exactly, right? Exactly.
Where do they get these things from?
Exactly. But at the end of that video, right, he makes sure to show you a grown adult person eating a meal, and underneath on the clean plate after the food is gone is a tiny Justin Bieber as a child picture. And that is fucking symbolic.
Oh, yeah.
And he did that on purpose.
Yeah, they ate off me. Yeah,
well, the sense that they ate his childhood away by abusing him.
They ate off him. Like they used him to get full on money and fame.
So the point I just wanted to make there at the end was that traditional media, it's not just TikTok and social media too, like
what
Disney.
A metaphor too, and I got that yummy yum. Like,
yeah, dude. Go listen to it again and watch the video.
He's been hitting on a lot of that stuff, you know, like Lonely and stuff. You know, a lot of these artists who are super mainstream and super feel these types of traps that we were talking about, the industry puts them in and proliferates because they know it sells, because they know that'll make them money, just like they're doing on social media and all these things. You know, it's all the money driven. A lot of them try and drop little hints along the way and put it into their music. I've heard that a lot about Britney's music and stuff too. If you analyze some of this stuff from the other side of, like, you know, a person's subconscious or their mind stream trying to proliferate an idea, you can find some of that stuff. Yeah. One other thing, just because the Britney documentary, I love documentaries about people. I guess Hulu. I've always been big into biographies and stuff, so I'm definitely on that. Tiger Woods documentary. Whoa. Yeah. Talk about another person who was, I mean, this time not sexualized, but, you know, just, again, proliferated for money and for all that stuff, you know, forced into these types of things. Because you even brought up a really good point earlier, something about that, about how the parent, like I said, where are the parents? And you said they're encouraging them to get famous on TikTok. You know, some of these kids are being pushed into these types of things.
Bhad Baby is a great example of that. You know,
like where they want them to go this way.
Her parents, she was actually completely against that.
No,
I actually heard that was a whole thing.
Yeah, no, her mom set all that up with Dr. Phil and all that, brought
her
on, played it up.
It was a whole facade.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
And then it got to a point, like, her and her mom are still, like, homies.
Oh, they're the best of friends.
They're best of friends.
She goes on tour with her everywhere and all that stuff. They're
and Bhad Baby is not really making music right now. Do you know where Bhad Baby gets all her influence and money? Instagram live videos. And do you know what her Instagram live videos are? Her in bikinis smoking blunts and twerking in the pool. That's her whole fucking brand.
Whole stick,
She's still not 18.
Yeah. Oh, what? I think that's not true.
Oh, yeah? Prove me wrong.
I mean, I'm going to. Man, that's crazy, though. Hey, well, on that.
Yeah, and I think that you're hitting on it. You hit a good point when you talked about Tiger Woods, because it's not just about hypersexualization. It's just about the fact that we have to accept that just because
17 years old still. That's crazy. She's been at this since she was probably 13 then.
13, 14.
And don't let me pull up one of these music videos.
So she has 15 albums. That's insane. That can't be right.
I think they're making all her singles albums, probably.
Yeah. The definitions keep changing. Like, we just keep changing the definitions of words. You know, like I had this whole post. I had this whole post last night. I was like, other people, Nazis weren't socialists, and then I just put the dictionary definition of Nazi, and it was like NA.ZI, a member of the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany. And I was like, I guess they just didn't know what they were talking about then. And I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say that they weren't doing things that were outside of the realm of socialism or whatever, but it's like, if we just keep changing the definitions of everything, then nobody will know what anything means, and we won't have any basis to, like, have a foundation upon which our thoughts can be built, you know. And I'm as you guys know, I'm a huge proponent of the idea that language is so much more powerful than just the words that we say. Like, there's meaning behind these words. There's meaning behind the stuff that we say, the stuff that we show, the stuff that we allow or influence our kids to do, you know? So, like, there's a strong correlation between being a child star for anything, movies, sports, and having mental health issues later on in life. Huge. I mean, what was the guy, not David Spade, the guy who played Screech in Saved by the Bell. One of my favorite shows as a child. I used to watch
Diamond.
Dustin Diamond. Dustin Diamond just recently died from throat cancer, and his girlfriend came out and was talking about his last few days and weeks of living. And he specifically told her, when I pass, I do not want a gravestone because I don't want people to fuck with me after I'm dead. I'd rather they not know where I am and where they can find me. He was so distraught at the kind of, and I mean, some people would say that he brought it upon himself because he was acting like a major douchebag, but I am a strong believer in the idea that hurt people hurt people. It's like, it's very hard to prove somebody's just straight up evil to me. I have a very hard a very strong threshold that has to be reached before I'll say that person's just evil, because it's like
you said, we all start blank.
You just start blank. It's not like you were born evil. Something happens to you.
You might have a very human nature, but then that is always proliferated by your nurture, right? So you can nurture people's nature to be differently or to be more of what they already whatever. Yeah. But so you're more predetermined to take to certain ideas and things as a human being, but you start blank.
And
so
we're starting to see that now with epigenetics and the idea that different markers in your environment will trigger different genes to not only fire or not fire, but also in the way that they're interpreted by your DNA or by your body and your biology. So genes that do one thing for one person under different circumstances will actually do different things for different people, even though they're the same genes. And so it's like, if we are now starting to understand that, I think that there is a nature and there is a nurture, but there is a much higher role that nurture plays than 100%. I think that we've been giving it credit. 100%. Because I've always said, if you take a child and you birth it into the wild, and you don't have it have any other human contact ever, it'll will not grow up to be a human. It will be an animal. On the off chance that it survives, 100%. It will be an animal. It will not be a human.
It's not going to talk English.
It's not going to talk anything. It's just going to do animal shit.
I've seen Jungle Book. I've seen Jungle Book.
Yeah, no,
this is a fact.
That's a real
sociology,
bitch. That's a real thing. That's a real thing. So, I mean, you're right. I don't think people are born evil, and I don't think that they're born mean or sexual or any of these things. We groom them. As you can hear, like pedophiles, they groom your kids or whatever. Like everybody's grooming a kid. So you got to be careful who and if that's you and who you're allowing to. That's the one funny word about the internet that always gets thrown around. Influencers, right? You're an influencer. Well, that's really what's happening. Like
you're being influenced.
You're being influenced by everything that you consume. And so I think we do need to be vigilant, and especially because, like you said, there is no more Big Brother. Yep. There's nobody out there looking out for you and being like, hey, you probably shouldn't look at that, or hey, you better be careful. That's not your bank.
Free and open internet access, baby.
You can do whatever the fuck you want to out here. So, just understand that that's happening. And then I guess, make your decisions wisely is what I would encourage.
Tread carefully.
Tread carefully. On the internet
and tread carefully. And if you have children or you're planning to have children, look out for your kids.
Look out for your kids.
Look out for your kids. Don't just let
think about
TikTok teach them. Don't let all of society tell them what's acceptable.
I fell for the trap. I know. Look, I mean, I'm the only parent here at this table, but I fell for the trap. Personally, fell for it. I was not involved as a young parent. Did not. I reveled in the fact that this stuff could distract my child while I go XYZ, but understand that that's what you're doing now. You're saying I'm vacating parenting role, I'm vacating the teaching, the grooming, the influencing, and I'm going to leave it up to this device while I go. So now that iPad or that internet is raising your kid.
Yeah,
and so
parenting is so much more than just keeping them clothed and fed and under a roof.
Yeah.
I know that's like the big tenet, like, oh, I clothe and I feed you and I keep you safe from the elements. And it's like, that's like the basic shit. That's like the minimum level. There's so much more going on at parenting than just that.
You do that shit for dogs.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Like, it's like, what are you talking about?
That's so funny, true. All right, well, hey, until the next time when we get some dangerous ideas.
Yeah, we're coming back to this, I think.
Oh.
I think we might be coming back to this one because
I'm sure we'll revisit
we've
this
got
in
a lot.
little while.
Yeah.
We'll see it. Hey, appreciate your time. See you again.
Peace.
Just when I think